Okay, boys and girls, today we're going to be talking about a new type of story. In the past, we know that we've read fiction and nonfiction. So we know what those two kinds of stories are. We know that fiction means fake, not true, and we know that nonfiction means true. Nonfiction stories give us facts about things like about animals or about places, and then fiction is make believe, it's fake. Well, today we're going to talk about a type of fiction story, a type of make believe story. Okay, these are called folk tales. Can you say that with me? Folk tale. Folk tale. Okay. What is a folk tale, Miss Cortez? What's a folk tale? Folk tales are stories passed on by word of mouth. That means that these stories get passed on from people to people to people. People share it with people, and then those people share it with more people, and then those people share it with more people. For example, these stories, you guys didn't know about them, right? But maybe your mom and dad told you about these stories, or maybe you learned some of them in class. So now those stories have been passed on, and then maybe when you're older, you're going to get to share those stories with little kids. So you're going to keep the story passing on and on and on. And that's what happens with folktales. They keep getting passed on from one person to the next person to the next person. So that's what it means when we say that they're passed on by word of mouth. Another cool thing about folktales is that they don't have an author. We don't know who wrote them because they started such a long time ago that we don't know who actually started telling the story first. Now we do have books about folktales. So people have written down the stories that they've heard, like Little Red Riding Hood. Somebody heard the story of Little Red Riding Hood and they wrote it down. But that doesn't mean that they're the person that wrote it the very first time. We don't know who wrote Little Red Riding Hood for the very first time. We don't know who wrote The Three Little Pigs for the very first time. We know the story, but we don't know it. We don't know who wrote it for the very, very first time. So these stories don't have a real author. But they are told all over the world. So if you go to different parts of the world, they might know what Little Red Riding Hood is. They might have heard the story of the Three Little Pigs. So these stories are so cool because they've been all over the world. People all over the world know about these stories, and they keep getting passed on from one person to the next person to the next person. Another cool part of folktales is that they teach us a lesson. So usually these stories teach us a lesson about something. They help us become better people in some way. Okay? So let's remember those three things about folktales. They're passed on by word of mouth, so that means they're passed on from one person to the next person to the next person. We don't know who the real author is because they started such a long time ago telling this story. We don't know who the first person that told the story is. And they teach us a lesson. Okay? So today you're going to hear a folk tale. It's called A Story, a Story. And when you look at it, you're going to feel like maybe it's kind of like a story that you've never seen before. Okay? Now, this story comes from Africa. So that means that they first started telling this story in Africa. So this is a folktale from Africa. And you see what I mean? Are we close to Africa? No, but we are going to get to hear this story too. So do you see how far these stories travel? They go all over the world. Folktales go all over the place. So today you'll be listening to an African folktale called A Story, a Story. As you listen to the story, I want you to think about this question. How can you tell that Anansi thought stories were valuable? Anansi is going to be the main character. So think about this question as you hear the story. How can you tell that Anansi, the main character, thought that stories were valuable? And another word for valuable is important, or that they're worth a lot, right? When something is valuable, it's really important to us. For example, your family is valuable to you. They're important to you. Okay. Maybe your Game Boy is valuable to you. It's important to you, right? If you lost it, you would be really upset, right? It's important to you. So, how can you tell that Anansi thought that stories were important or that they were worth a lot? Okay, think about that question. And then you're going to go and you're going to watch the video or the story. Okay?